Imagine this. It's October 1952. You're 15 years old, your cheek pressed against the cold glass of a car window, watching the familiar streets of South Boston slide by. Red and gold leaves rustle along cracked sidewalks, and the crisp autumn air carries the faint smell of smoke and gasoline. Everything looks the same, but absolutely nothing feels the same. In the front seat, your mother's hands clutch a string of rosary beads so tightly her knuckles have turned white. She's whispering prayers under her breath, but they don't seem aimed at God. They feel more like she's trying to convince herself of something. Beside her, your father grips the steering wheel like he's navigating through a storm that no one dares to name. He hasn't looked at you all day, not at the breakfast table, where the silence was deafening. And not now, in this car, on this ride to nowhere you recognize. This morning, they told you that you'd be staying somewhere for a while, just until things settled down, just until the problem was handled. What they didn't tell you is that 3 days ago, they signed papers, legal documents that handed complete and total control of your life over to strangers. Papers that effectively erased your identity. Papers that declared you would not make another decision for yourself possibly ever again. You're on your way to a place run by the Sisters of the Good Shepherd. They called it a refuge, a home for guidance, but the words they didn't use are the ones that truly matter. They didn't tell you that most girls who walk through those doors never leave as the same person they were when they arrived. You don't know that a priest from the local parish visited your parents last week. You don't know that he sat in your living room and told them your pregnancy was a stain on the family's reputation, a public shame that had to be contained. You don't know that the church offered a neat, quiet solution, one that protected your parents' good name by completely erasing you. By tomorrow, the girl who dreamed of becoming a teacher, who loved sketching in her notebook and listening to the radio, will cease to exist. Her name, her clothes, her future, all of it will be rewritten by people who preach that suffering is the path to salvation. And the baby, the tiny life growing inside of her, that baby will be gone, placed with a family of strangers who will never know the name of the girl who brought them into this world, or the sacrifice she was forced to make. This story, in a work of fiction. This scenario was a brutal reality for tens of thousands of American girls who vanished into institutions just like this one, from the 1800s all the way into the late 20th century. Some were held for a few years, some for decades. Many of their records were intentionally lost or never created in the first place, making them ghosts in their own history. They were sent away for being pregnant, for being difficult or promiscuous, for being too independent, or simply for embarrassing the wrong people. Tonight, we follow the story of one of these girls, Mary Catherine Sullivan. Her journey, in just one of personal tragedy. It's a window into how unchecked authority, cloaked in the comforting robes of faith and tradition, created one of the most effective and hidden systems of exploitation in modern American history. Because what happened to Mary Catherine didn't just end with her. The consequences of these homes ripple through families and communities even today. Now, we are going to step inside the Good Shepherd home itself. We'll uncover how the first 43 days were meticulously engineered to break a girl's spirit, to dismantle her identity, and to forge out obedience, one soul-crushing rule at a time. The moment Mary Catherine's foot crossed the threshold of the Good Shepherd home, her old life was over. The heavy oak door didn't just close behind her. It slammed shut on her past, her family, and her name. Before she was even shown to a room, she was stripped of everything that made her Mary Catherine. Her street clothes, the familiar dress her mother had made, were taken and replaced with a coarse, gray, shapeless uniform. Her leather shoes were swapped for plain, hard slippers. Even the locket she wore, a small gift from her grandmother, was confiscated. Vanity is a sin, a stern face none told her, dropping it into a wooden box with dozens of others. Next came the loss of her name. She was no longer Mary Catherine Sullivan. She was now number 147. Every girl was assigned a number. This wasn't just for administrative ease. It was the first and most crucial step in erasing their individuality. A name connects you to your family, to your friends, to your own sense of self. A number makes you anonymous, interchangeable, and easy to control. When the nuns called 147, she was expected to respond instantly. Failure to do so meant punishment. Her days were rigidly structured. Every minute accounted for, from the 5:30 a.m. wake-up bell to the 9 p.m. lights out. There was no room for personal thought, no time for idle reflection. The schedule was a weapon, designed to exhaust the body and numb the mind. Mornings were for prayer and scripture, where sermons focused on sign, penitence, and the inherent wickedness of women. The girls were taught that their presence in the home was proof of their moral failure, and only through silent suffering and hard labor could they hope for redemption. The labor was the cornerstone of the institution's model. The Good Shepherd homes operated massive, commercial-scale laundries. For 8 to 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, Mary Catherine and the other girls stood in clouds of scalding steam, their hands raw from harsh lye soap and boiling water. They washed and pressed linens for local hospitals, hotels, and even military bases. This wasn't character-building work. It was grueling, industrial labor that generated huge profits for the convent. The girls saw none of this money. Their atonement was the institution's income. Silence was the unbreakable rule. Talking was forbidden outside of designated, supervised periods. Girls were not allowed to speak in the dormitories, in the laundry, or in the hallways. This enforced isolation was a powerful tool of control. It prevented friendships from forming, stopped the sharing of stories, and made it impossible for the girls to organize or support one another. A whispered word, a shared glance, a moment of solidarity, all were treated as grave infractions. Punishment could be anything from a public shaming during meals to being forced to kneel on a stone floor for hours, or the withholding of food. This environment was designed to foster suspicion and fear. The nuns encouraged girls to report on one another for breaking the rules. A girl who reported another might receive a small favor, like an extra piece of bread at dinner. This system turned the girls against each other, creating a culture of mistrust that further solidified the nuns' authority. You couldn't trust the girl sleeping in the bed next to you, because she might be the one to report you for crying in your sleep. The first 43 days were the most critical. It was a period of intense indoctrination. Mary Catherine was taught that her thoughts were sinful, her body was a source of shame, and her past was a mistake that had to be scrubbed clean. Just like the endless piles of dirty linens, she learned that obedience was survival. She learned to lower her eyes when a nun passed, to speak only when spoken to, and to erase any trace of the person she used to be. The goal wasn't to guide her, it was to break her, to dismantle her identity piece by piece until all that was left was number 147, a silent, obedient worker in the service of the Good Shepherd. This process was repeated with chilling efficiency on every new arrival. It was a psychological blueprint for creating a compliant, unpaid labor force, all under the guise of religious salvation. Mary Catherine's story is not just about a single institution. It's about a system that thrived in the shadows, preying on those with nowhere else to turn. What she endured in those first few weeks was just the beginning. Her fight to reclaim her name, her child, and her life would become a battle against an institution that had perfected the art of making girls disappear. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. If you found this story compelling, please like this video. We believe these stories need to be told, and the Good Shepherd home looks peaceful from the outside. Red brick walls, tall, elegant windows, and a statue of the Virgin Mary gracing the entrance. Her hands are open, as if to welcome all the lost children of the world. A sign on the gate promises guidance, rehabilitation, and second chances. For a few fleeting minutes, a young girl named Mary Catherine almost believes it. A smiling nun, Sister Margaret, leads her through the polished hallways. Her voice is soft, her smile is careful, and her words are gentle. She reassures Mary Catherine that this is a place of healing. But that softness, that gentle facade, it won't last. As soon as the paperwork is signed, her parents leave. There's no last hug, no tearful goodbye, just a quiet, final click of the door. And then, the rules begin. The first rule is the most jarring. She can no longer use her name. Names tie girls to their sin, Sister Margaret explains, her voice losing some of its earlier warmth. From now on, you will be number 47. The rules keep coming, one after another. She is told not to speak of her family, not to ask when she'll be able to leave, and most importantly, not to question anything. Each rule alone seems small, almost trivial. But together, they build a cage, brick by invisible brick. Soon, the building itself starts to reveal its secrets. The windows that look decorative from a distance have iron bars hidden within their frames. The beautiful garden paths don't lead anywhere. They just loop endlessly back to the main building. And the heavy oak doors, they lock automatically behind you. The other girls are like ghosts. Their eyes are always lowered, their steps are synchronized, and they barely speak above a whisper. Human connection, she learns, is a forbidden luxury. The silence is a constant, heavy presence. By the 7th day, her own clothes are taken away. They are replaced with a rough, gray dress, identical to the one every other girl wears. It scratches her skin, a constant reminder of her new status. This teaches humility, Sister Margaret says, her smile now gone completely. By the 14th day, a letter arrives. It's from her parents. But the words are cold, disappointing, distant. It's a scolding, a list of her failures. The letter ends without a single word of affection. What Mary Catherine doesn't know, what none of the girls know, is that the staff wrote it. It's just another tool of control. By the 3rd week, she's forced to walk down a long hall lined with photographs of former residents. They're all smiling, but the smiles are empty, and their eyes are hollow, vacant. A deep, cold fear sinks into her bones. She sees her own future reflected in those soulless portraits. Kindness becomes a form of courtesy here. An extra slice of bread at dinner, a gentle word from a less severe nun, a simple nod of approval. These things are rare and incredibly precious. They are traded and coveted. Slowly, without even realizing it, she begins to adapt. Survival instincts kick in and rewire her brain. Resistance is replaced by a desperate need for approval. Dependency takes the place of her former independence. The system is brilliant in its cruelty. It doesn't need chains or physical restraints. It builds prisons inside the mind, walls that are far harder to tear down than any made of brick and mortar. This transformation is by design. What Mary Catherine is experiencing is the beginning of a process to break her spirit, to make her compliant. But this is just the start of her story at the Good Shepherd home. This initial period of psychological conditioning is only phase 1. It's preparing her for what comes next. In our next video, we'll uncover the brutal labor system that turned these broken girls into a source of profit. We lines explore how Mary Catherine's forced obedience wasn't just about control, it was about turning her into a commodity. The real story of the Good Shepherd home is much darker than just lost names and gray dresses. Ever heard the phrase labor cleanses sin? For thousands of young women, this wasn't just a saying, it was a sentence. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on a story of profit disguised as salvation, of exploitation masked as redemption. And at the heart of it all, a simple laundry, a place where the truth, quite literally, comes out in the wash. Imagine this, a young woman named Mary Catherine, trapped within the towering stone walls of a convent laundry. 14 hours a day, she stands over steaming vats, her hands raw and bleeding from scrubbing endless piles of hospital sheets and hotel linens. The air is thick with the choking fumes of industrial chemicals and the oppressive, damp heat. Her world has shrunk to this single, punishing task. The quotas they set are impossible, a deliberate design. Falling short isn't just a failure. It's a moral failing, a sign of her inherent sinfulness. The sisters, the women in charge, constantly remind her and the others why they're there. They're told they are fallen women, tainted, in need of purification. And the path to that purification, they say, is through hard, relentless labor. But this isn't about cleansing souls, it's about business. Let's be clear about what's really happening. Mary Catherine, and every girl beside her, is a source of free labor. The common has contracts with local hospitals, hotels, even the military. The profits from their back-breaking work flow directly into the institution's coffers, funding its operations and expansion. This isn't charity, it's an incredibly profitable, tax-exempt enterprise built on the suffering of its captives. And the exploitation runs even deeper. Many of the girls, like Mary Catherine, arrive pregnant. The sisters see each pregnancy not as a life to be nurtured, but as another future source of income. Once the babies are born, they are quietly, and often illegally, transferred to wealthy, well-connected families. These weren't adoptions in the way we understand them today, they were transactions. For a significant donation to the church, a family could receive a child. The mothers were given no say, no information, and no hope of ever seeing their children again. Mary Catherine doesn't know where her baby went. A boy? A girl? She has no idea. The one time she dared to ask, she was severely punished for her selfishness, her lack of gratitude for the care she was receiving. The message was clear: your child is gone. Your body, your labor, your grief, they all belong to us now. The silence is a wall, and every unanswered question is another brick. So she learns to survive. She watches new girls arrive, their eyes wide with fear and confusion. She becomes part of the system that broke her, demonstrating the rules of obedience, showing them how to fold sheets with perfect precision, how to bow their heads, how to erase themselves. Each act of compliance is a small death, another piece of her spirit chipping away. She does it not out of cruelty, but out of a desperate, primal need to avoid the punishment that she knows will follow any misstep. Then, something truly terrifying happens. It's her 35th day. A supervisor, Sister Margaret, is correcting her posture at the mangle, a dangerous machine that presses sheets with heated rollers. The sister's hand rests on Mary Catherine's shoulder, and in that brief moment of contact, a wave of warmth and relief washes over her. For the first time in over a month, she feels something other than pain or fear. She feels seen. She feels a flicker of affection. This is the most insidious part of the system. It's not just about physical control, it's about psychological capture. After being starved of all human kindness, the smallest crumb of approval from her captors feels like a feast. She begins to crave it, to work harder, to be more obedient, not just to avoid punishment, but to earn that fleeting sense of warmth. She starts to believe that these women, the very people who stole her child and her freedom, are the only ones who can offer her salvation. She starts to feel gratitude for her own cage. At this moment, the system has truly won. She is no longer just a prisoner. She is a willing participant in her own subjugation. This psychological phenomenon is well documented in situations of extreme control and abuse. It's a survival mechanism. When your entire world is controlled by an oppressor, your brain can rewire itself to align with that oppressor. Seeking their approval becomes a way to maintain a sense of safety and predictability in an otherwise unbearable environment. It's a tragic, but deeply human, response to an inhuman situation. The final stage of this process is an examination, a ritual meant to signify her rehabilitation, but it's not a graduation. It's the final act of stripping her of everything. Standing before a panel of stern-faced sisters, Mary Catherine is made to recount her sins in excruciating detail. She is forced to confess her supposed moral failings, to thank them for their discipline, to internalize the narrative that she was broken and they have fixed her. She has to perform her own repentance, validating their power and her powerlessness. She must renounce her past, her family, even her own name in some cases, accepting the new identity they have forged for her. She is no longer Mary Catherine, the girl who loved to read and had a family that missed her. She is now a penitent, a cog in the machine, forever indebted to the institution that saved her from herself. Her memory is rewritten, her identity erased. This is the moment that ensures she will likely never truly escape, even if she one day walks out of those gates. Because physical freedom is only half the battle. How do you leave when the prison has been built inside your own mind? When you've been conditioned to believe you are worthless without your captors? When the outside world seems more terrifying than the structured cruelty you've come to know? The psychological chains are often stronger than any iron lock. Many women who left these laundries carried the shame, guilt, and trauma for the rest of their lives. They struggled to form relationships, to trust others, to believe in their own worth. The echoes of the sisters' voices, the smell of the bleach, the constant feeling of being watched, it never really leaves them. The story of Mary Catherine is fictional, but it represents the real, lived experiences of tens of thousands of women in places like the Magdalen Laundries in Ireland and similar institutions across the world. These weren't relics of a distant, medieval past. The last one in Ireland didn't close until 1996. This is recent history. It's a stark reminder of how systems of power can exploit the vulnerable under the guise of morality and religion. It's a story of stolen lives, stolen children, and stolen identities. And it's a story that needs to be told, so that we never forget the women who are silenced behind the laundry walls. Thank you so much for watching and for bearing witness to this important story. If you found this video meaningful, please consider liking and subscribing for more deep dives into history's hidden chapters. By night, Mary Catherine walks the hallways without fear. The resistance is gone. The questions are gone. This is the night of her final examination. They told her it was medical, spiritual, and necessary. They quoted scripture. Their voices were calm, almost soothing. But what happened in that room stripped away every last piece of autonomy she had left. Hours later, when it was over, she found herself thinking them. The girl who once loved poetry, who dreamed of becoming a teacher, who pressed flowers into her journals, she was gone. In her place stood penitent number 47, and then she vanished. Mary Catherine Sullivan's name disappears from all public records. Was she discharged, adopted? Did she end up in a cemetery? There's nothing. Just administrative silence, a complete and total erasure. But we know what that silence often means, thanks to the stories of survivors. It means decades of forced obedience, unpaid labor, a life without family, and the constant renaming that strips away your identity. For many, leaving was never an option. They simply never left at all. This wasn't some medieval horror story. This was the reality inside the Good Shepherd homes, a network of institutions that operated across the globe. The very home where Mary Catherine was held exists today, just under a different name. It gets government funding. It has clean, modern brochures and uses contemporary language. But if you look closely, the underlying logic is chillingly familiar: control framed as care, silence framed as healing, and punishment framed as redemption. The story of Mary Catherine Sullivan is not unique. Her experience is shared by tens of thousands of women and girls across the United States, Ireland, Canada, and Australia. These were the Magdalen Laundries, the Bon Secours mother and baby homes, the industrial schools, places where fallen women and inconvenient children were sent to be hidden away. You might imagine these institutions as being run by monsters, by cartoon villains rubbing their hands together in the dark. But the terrifying truth is that they didn't need monsters. They thrived on ordinary people. They were fueled by families who wanted to avoid shame, by communities who looked the other way, and by governments that found it easier to fund containment than to offer real support. These institutions relied on the quiet complicity of society, on the collective outsourcing of guilt. A daughter who got pregnant, a wife who was difficult, a girl who was simply too spirited, they could all be sent away, their problem solved, their stories silenced. Mary Catherine's life wasn't taken by a single evil act. It was slowly, methodically dismantled by a system designed to protect reputations, not people. She was erased so others could maintain their veneer of respectability. She lost her future so a community could pretend it didn't have problems. Her name, her dreams, her very existence were sacrificed at the altar of social convenience. When we talk about the history of these places, we're not just talking about the past. We're talking about a pattern of behavior that still echoes today. We see it in how we treat marginalized groups, in the systems that prioritize profit and control over human dignity. The language changes, the buildings get a facelift, but the impulse to hide away what makes us uncomfortable remains. So, why is it so crucial to remember names like Mary Catherine Sullivan? Because remembering is an act of resistance. It's a refusal to accept the silence. It's a way of saying that her life mattered, that her story will not be erased. By speaking her name, we reclaim a piece of the humanity that was stolen from her. We honor the girl who loved poetry and dreamed of teaching. This is the real danger of unchecked institutions, not the overt cruelty, but the quiet, bureaucratic evil that allows ordinary people to commit extraordinary harm without ever feeling like they've done anything wrong. They were just following rules, just doing their jobs, just maintaining order. And in that process, lives were destroyed. Mary Catherine Sullivan lost her life so others could protect their reputation. We have a choice. We can be the generation that refuses to let silence do that work ever again. We can choose to ask the hard questions, to listen to the uncomfortable stories, and to hold power accountable. Remember her name. Remember what was done in the name of goodness, and let that memory fuel our demand for a world where no one is ever erased again. Subscribe to A Wicked Historian and hit the bell icon for more videos like this. Comment below and let me know what other hidden histories you want me to explore. Thanks for watching.